Hey there, future CMAs. Welcome back to another explainer. I am so absolutely thrilled to have you here today. So, in our last session together, we built the secure foundation of our internal controls house by really mastering IT general controls. Well, today we're moving inside that house to look at something much more granular: application and transaction controls. If our general controls are, say, the locks on the front door of the house, these application controls, they're the specific safes and lock display cases protecting the individual highly valuable transactions moving through our systems every single day. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the entire philosophy of today's lesson can be summed up in a very famous IT adage: garbage in, garbage out. GIGO. Our goal today is pretty simple. We have to make absolutely sure that what goes into our accounting system is accurate, authorized, and complete. Just think of application controls as the highly intelligent filters we build to stop the garbage from ever getting inside in the first place. All right, here is our lesson plan for mastering Part 1, Section E. 1. The guardrails of data. 2. The three-step pipeline. 3. Input controls and edit checks. 4. Processing and output controls. And 5. CMA exam practice test. Section 1. The guardrails of data. So why do we even need these guardrails to begin with? Well, because we're human, right? And human beings inevitably make mistakes. We accidentally type an extra zero, we transpose some numbers, or maybe we just process the exact same invoice twice. We desperately need systems in place that anticipate these everyday human errors. And this brings us right to our core definition. Application and transaction controls are specific, programmable guardrails built directly into your software applications. This isn't some abstract network firewall out in the ether. No, these controls live right inside your daily tools, like your ERP, your payroll system, or your inventory ledger. They're right there on the front lines, specifically designed to prevent, detect, and correct transactional errors way before they can corrupt your financial statements. Section 2. The three-step data pipeline. Let's move to and see how this builds. On the CMA exam, it is absolutely crucial to understand that data always travels through a strict three-step journey. No matter what business process you're auditing or managing, we need to map that journey out. First up, we have input, which is simply entering data into the system. Think keying in a sales order. Next is processing, where the system actually performs calculations or updates files, like multiplying the quantity of items by their price and updating accounts receivable. Finally, we reach output, where the system generates a report or document, like printing the final invoice or rendering a monthly financial statement. To ensure our financial statements are completely accurate, we gotta have specific controls active at every single one of these three stages. Section 3. Input controls and edit checks. Okay, let's break down the most heavily tested stage first: input controls. This is our first line of defense. Think about it. If we successfully block bad data at the door, we really don't have to worry about it corrupting our processing or totally ruining our reports later on. Because this is so heavily tested, I want to isolate a vital vocabulary word you absolutely must memorize for exam day: edit checks. Sometimes they're also called validation checks. These are the automated input controls designed to evaluate data right at the very moment of entry and literally block any invalid transactions immediately. There are a few specific edit checks you really need to know. Let's walk through the first three. First is the field or format check. This ensures only the correct character type is entered. Like, it completely prevents you from typing letters into a social security number field, which obviously should only contain numbers. Next up is a sign check, which just looks at whether the data has the appropriate arithmetic sign, positive or negative. A great example here is ensuring hours worked on a timesheet cannot possibly be entered as a negative number. No one works negative 40 hours. Then we have a limit check. This tests numerical fields against a single preset upper or lower limit. For instance, it might flag an error if a regular employee's weekly timesheet exceeds a limit of, say, 60 hours. Now, I want to pause here for a second because this is a classic trap on the exam. Candidates frequently confuse a limit check with a range check. Here's exactly how you tell them apart. A limit check has a single boundary, like a maximum of 60 hours. A range check, however, tests numerical fields against two boundaries, both an upper and a lower limit. For example, a range check ensures a transaction date falls between January 1st and December 31st. One boundary versus two. You definitely want to keep that distinct in your mind. All right, let's look at our remaining essential edit checks. A completeness check simply verifies that all required fields actually contain data before allowing the user to hit submit. It will literally keep a vendor invoice from being processed if a crucial field, like the tax ID number, is just left entirely blank. Next is a validity check, which compares entered data against a pre-existing master file list. If you type in an account number that doesn't actually exist in the company's chart of accounts, the system's going to reject the entry. Finally, we have the incredibly clever check digit. This is an algorithm that calculates an extra redundant digit and adds it to an ID code specifically to catch keying or transposition errors. Credit card numbers actually use check digits. If you accidentally swap two numbers while typing in your card, the check digit calculation instantly fails and the system rejects the entry. It's just a brilliant safeguard. Section 4. Processing and Output Controls. So we've successfully filtered our data at the input stage. But what happens once that squeaky clean data is safely inside the system? Well, that brings us to our internal operations, processing and output controls. Processing controls ensure the system calculates the data correctly without magically losing any transactions along the way. A classic, highly tested processing control is the run-to-run total. Sometimes you'll hear this called control totals. Let's say you submit a batch of 100 payroll checks totaling exactly $150,000. Before processing, the system calculates that batch balance. Then, after processing all those complex calculations like deducting all the taxes and benefits, the system recalculates the totals to make absolutely sure they still tie out to the original input expectations. If that math doesn't tie out, boom, the system immediately flags a processing error. Finally, we reach output controls. These ensure that your properly processed results are accurate and, super importantly, distributed only to authorized people. After all, you certainly don't want a highly confidential, company-wide payroll report automatically printing out to a shared hallway printer where absolutely anyone walking by can just grab it. Output controls prevent this kind of nightmare by using distribution logs where someone actually has to sign off on who gets the report. They also use reconciliations of output totals back to those input totals we just discussed, and secure spooling queues that hold documents safely until an authorized user actually releases them. Section 5. CMA Exam Practice Test. Okay, team, you've learned the framework, you've memorized the vocabulary, now it's time to put all of it to the test. This is exactly how they're going to test your application of these concepts on exam day. Here's our scenario. An accounts payable clerk accidentally enters a vendor invoice number as 948A2 instead of 94882. Which of the following controls would be most effective in detecting this data entry error? Notice the very specific error here. They mistakenly typed the letter A right in the middle instead of the number 8. Let's look at our options and narrate our process of elimination using the exact definitions we just learned together. Option A is a sign check. Well, we know a sign check only looks for positive or negative signs, so that definitely won't catch a letter. Option B is a limit check. That looks for numbers exceeding a single threshold, so that's incorrect. Option D is a range check, which looks for numbers falling between a high and low value, so that's also out. Which leaves us with option C, the field or format check. Remember, this one specifically checks whether characters are numeric, alphabetic, or alphanumeric. Because an invoice number field should strictly consist of numbers, a field format check would instantly flag that letter A as an error. If you chose C, you absolutely nailed it. Great job! Mastering the difference between input, processing, and output controls really is your golden ticket to scoring high on Section E of the CMA exam. As you go back to your desk today, I want to leave you with this question. How will you visualize the flow of data in your own organization? Seriously, if you can trace the transaction through your own company's pipeline and identify the guardrails at every single stage, these exam questions are going to feel like second nature to you. Keep visualizing, keep studying hard, and I will see you in our next explainer.